How did everyone sleep last night?
Right before we hit record, Fletch goes, HD, you're in my dream last night. It was not a good dream.
It just wasn't a good one. You woke
Fle-
up and really had to shake it off. And the weird thing is when you wake up and think that your dream is part of your reality, and it like takes your brain a second to, separate the two. But that was a heavy one.
You've been struggling with sleeping recently, Fletch.
Yeah, I'd like to say it's not me actually, yes, it is me who is struggling, but it's because I have had dealt with a problem. And it is a problem which I will vocalize and be open about.
You seem to be struggling to be open and vocalized.
Yeah, you're kind of beating around the bush.
I'm beating around the bush because
ruffling around the sheets.
Yeah, it was an unexpected invitation to bed bugs.
The only unwelcome guest.
Mm-hmm.
Dude.
And once they come, they're like squatters. They do not like to leave.
You know what they do? This is what they do. They hide in cracks, crevices, warm places under beds, and then they wait for you to fall asleep, and then they come out, and they don't just suck on you, okay? They cut a little hole in your skin, make a smoothie with your flesh, and then drink the smoothie, and then go back into their warm crevasse. And then a lot of times, they'll go weeks without eating, so then you don't know whether they're there or not, okay? But you just have all these bumps all over your body.
Did you bomb the bedroom or?
Oh yeah, I went through a full on bed bug diagnosis or prevention. No.
How does Fletch
treatment
bomb
plan?
How does Fletch bomb the bedroom?
Okay, step 1, wash everything. Anything, clothing, bed, all that, throw it in high heat, ASAP Rocky. Second, get all carpets out of the house. Furniture, it needs to be specialized Stanley steamer cleaned. Next step is go buy actual treatment. So I went and bought treatment, little bombs, and bombed the whole house. Did not sleep here for 5 days. And then I went and got specific spray to spray all the crevices in the wood because this is an older house. Now, since the treatment, have I seen, heard, or come face to face with any bed bugs? No. So would I call it a success so far? Yes.
But in your initial description, you didn't come face to face with them. They would hide before you actually woke up, right?
I know. I'm just trying to intensify the story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of course.
I got you. So they're not nibbling on you anymore.
As of right now, I have had no nibbles.
Because I'm still stuck on this whole idea of smoothie being created, because we know that Fletch is obviously a master smoothie maker. McKenzie especially likes his raw egg.
No, he's
smoothie.
not. No, he's not. He's not a massive. No, he's a disgusting smoothie maker.
So is this
Pump
maybe
my ego up
a little bit karmic here, where the bed bugs are now making smoothie? I mean, but is it the type of smoothie like, okay, you're just blending blood, or do they have some other ingredients that they like to blend in there?
Well, they go into the kitchen, grab the flax and chia too.
Okay, so they know what they're doing.
Yes, of course.
It's payback for all the raw eggs you throw in your smoothie every day, Fletch.
No, dude, I think it's payback for all the times my parents would put me to bed and said, "Don't let the bed bugs bite." I don't even know if you call it payback, but it's more just like some weird thing in which they have now found me. Bugs and I have a weird relationship.
You need to say more about that?
No. Well, yes. I just think it's because my I had some funny encounters with fleas in college. You remember that, HD?
Oh, that's where you got the nickname.
No. Just because a bug enters your life, this mosquito bites you, you're going to start calling the dude Mosquito for his nickname?
No, I mean, it works out that your name was Fletch. Flea came in. I mean, it just made sense. It worked in the time.
The NOLA house, I remember the kitchen had so many fleas.
Those are
fruit flies.
Those are fruit flies that follow wherever Fletch's fruit flies will follow. You just
because I'm a fruitarian, dude. Obviously, if you're on a fruit diet, you're gonna attract fruit flies?
All right.
On that note,
We have a lot to get through today. You guys ready to get started?
I hope it's fruitful.
Knee slapper. Yeah, let's jump into it. Get off these bugs. We can redirect this conversation.
It's gonna be alright.
If you can give your community permission, especially with men, it can go a long way.
And only from that place of peace can a relationship truly be reconciled.
When I saw the But if I stop and create a little space, then there's that room for a response. Then I can actually check in with myself.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Dudes with Feelings. I'm here with the other two dudes amongst the pack of trio that is Fletcher Barnes and Henry Davis, and I'm McKenzie Beeby. And Fletch, since we're already on you talking about bed bugs, why don't you talk about what you brought to the podcast today?
Well, can you go ahead and show the video?
Sure.
I would love to start with that.
They talk about toxic masculinity, but then the other spectrum seems to be feminine masculinity. And there seems to be no healthy masculinity. It's a good thing when men discover their strength and their courage, their nobility, their integrity. I think it's a misread when people think women do not want men who are truly masculine. You don't need to become less to have a healthy relationship with a woman. Powerful women want to have powerful men. They need powerful men. And you don't need a wife who's powerless to be masculine. I think men who are afraid of their masculinity, who are uncertain of their masculinity, want weak women.
Okay, so first off, a little bit of background. That's Erwin McManus. He is a author and a pastor. I've read a couple of his books. His books have been very eye-opening for me in the realm of creativity and spirituality. So I have a trust within him, and and take his information, his words through a certain lens, which is through that lens of trust. But I thought, and why this video really resonated with me was because he's talking about these two spectrums, right? Which is that the feminine masculinity or that viewpoint, and then that toxic masculinity, that phrase that gets tossed around all the time. And I think for me, how that has shown up is, the last couple of years as I've been kind of searching for myself and really diving into who I am and who I'm becoming, I've recognized that my lack of decision making and my lack of taking responsibility and accountability for my own actions has fallen towards this more feminine masculinity. And so I felt like it was kind of calling me out, and I felt like it was kind of a nugget of knowledge and wisdom that I wanted to discuss with you dudes.
Can you maybe break that down a little bit more, that idea of feminine masculinity? Like what does that look like? What might be some examples of that, just to help myself, the audience, better understand what you're talking about?
Yeah, so how I feel like that shows up is not making a decision, right? I think that shows up in not being responsible. I think it shows up with being rather indecisive with what you want in life. I think it, not being able to actively design and control your emotions and regulate yourself. I think back to, when I first discovered that I resonate and I identify as an artist. And just because I identify as an artist doesn't mean I have to be in the world of quote unquote like divine feminine. And I think that is where that was kind of my awakening and very enlightening for me, is you can be an artist and also be a someone of balance in that masculine approach.
So this idea that the artist being a more emotional, just because I want to make it a little more like just trying to understand it fully, because the artist tends to be more feelings based, more emotional. That is maybe what you're talking about when you talk about the feminine, but that there is this other side of, because what is that? Is that kind of what you're associating to? Is like the feminine being more of the feeler, more of the empath, and then the
Exactly.
masculine
Yeah. The
being more of the
empath
creator?
functioning with like intuition, um, a lot of different like feelings, would quote unquote view themselves and probably describe themselves as like, um, yeah, a high feeler empath and um, like more gentle disposition, I would say.
Yeah, McKenzie, what came up for you around this? I'm curious.
I agree with a lot of what he's saying um, in the video. I don't agree with the terminology feminine masculinity. There's a lot of conflict that I've seen arise with a lot of men when the man assumes the more feminine energy in a relationship and the woman assumes more of a masculine energy in the relationship. Unless both parties are truly content with associating with that energy, it causes lots of conflict. And a man, I found really a lot of times that men who tend to be more feminine oftentimes have a lot of shame around embracing their masculine energy, because you should be able to embrace both without feeling shameful or prosecuted. And the men who embrace their feminine energy more are the ones who tend to shame their masculine energy. And the men who lean into their masculine energy too much and avoid their feminine energy view that feminine energy as beneath them, below them. And I think that's the toxic masculinity that they talk about. So, in terms of terminology, that's kind of where my head went. Was I don't believe that there's such thing as feminine masculinity. I believe they're two totally different energies that give off different things. Masculine energy is more based off security and providing security for someone, and feminine energy is more based off of tapping into those deeper emotions and being able to communicate those effectively. Um, and so both need each other in order to provide a safe environment. And I really think a lot of people try to pit one against the other or view one above the other. And that's kind of where things get dangerous culturally.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah,
the way you just said it, Mackenzie, is it resonates with me, and I think you put the how I am interpreting what you're saying is they need to be able to communicate, and you need to be able to seek balance. Um, I think what's hard is when you get really comfortable with the relationship with one and continue to go down that perpetual pattern, and that becomes your quote unquote norm. And then that norm then attaches to your identity. And so when it's attached to identity, I think it gets really uncomfortable then to disassociate or grow out of that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of men out there who give off and project their feminine energy but want to be interpreted as a masculine man. And that's where you get a lot of guys attracting a toxic relationship to begin with. No matter who's toxic in the relationship, a guy giving off that feminine energy and behaving into that femininity and not embracing it and wanting people to interpret them as a masculine man, it causes problems and it causes confusion. And there is a way. we call it being an integrated man. There is a way to tap into both energies in a healthy way and be able to be that masculine man, but then also open up into that feminine man when you have to process something that's difficult. And they work in unison. They've worked for generations in unison, but what we're seeing now is this shame and prosecution towards one another culturally that's causing lots of problems.
Yeah. I was having a conversation this past weekend with someone who's actually a pastor, and he leads a congregation, a young congregation. So obviously he's kind of forced to address a lot of these social issues. And he recently had been in conversation with someone who had grown up in his church, whose parents still attended the church, who had grown up a female and had decided that she wanted to convert to being a male and wanted to go through the treatments for that. And had approached her parents, and her parents had approached this pastor asking for guidance and discernment on that. Which obviously this erupts a much larger conversation that we don't need to have. But I thought one of the, at least right now, one of the interesting components that came from that is his exploration of this has, he said, helped him realize how messy the language is around this. And there is some piece of this where I'm like, the language is still just confusing. We're not agreeing on terms. And I think what you're saying, McKenzie, is maybe what he's saying is feminine female or masculine female or masculine male, as opposed to feminine masculinity, which is a confusing phrasing for me.
Yeah.
And it feels like we need to get a little bit clearer on what we're actually saying as a culture and what these words mean. I saw in a bathroom recently, gender is a construct. Okay, but is sex a construct? Like we just seem dispersed, and it's creating more confusion than clarity.
Yeah.
And so I think what we're sifting through is like what he's trying to say here, and I think we're getting to it. Maybe the one other piece that I wanted to bring up with you guys on this piece is this idea of being a powerful man or a powerful woman. And he said, powerful women want powerful men. What does power, like, what does that really mean to you guys? And I'm curious because there's obviously so much more to unpack there. Is that the same, the powerful woman, the powerful man? Because when I think of power, I'm thinking convicted leadership. You know where you want to go. You're able to help them get there. How did that land with you guys, that language around being a powerful man?
I'll go ahead and start. I think for me, that is something that HD through the yoga teacher training, like standing in your power, means to stand in all of who you are, and that is to own everything. Own everything. Own your shame, own your guilt, own your faults, own all that make you you. And that is you standing in your power. And when you can own all your insecurities and weaknesses, then you will attract someone who is doing the same, and you can meet someone who is quote unquote powerful. I think power can have a lot of negative connotations, which can demean or put someone down, but I didn't view his whole point of view or his talk about being a powerful man through that lens of putting someone down or being in a position of quote unquote power.
I interpret power a little bit differently than he does, I think, in his video. I believe he was speaking in that power was more aligned with a more masculine approach to life. Where I see power is power can be found in both the feminine and the masculine. There is ways to feel empowered in both of those. And you can feel empowered in being able to communicate your emotions. How many times have you had a difficult conversation and approached somebody with that difficult conversation and then felt lighter afterwards? That's empowerment in the feminine. And then on the other end, how many times have you been able to provide for someone or be able to provide emotional security or just general security for someone? and be able to look after them and take care of them. That's feeling empowered in the masculine. And so I believe a lot of people don't understand that emotions give off different energies in you internally. And power is an emotion that makes you feel so alive and so needed and purpose driven and valued. And we believe, I think most people believe, that it's only associated with one construction culturally in terms of gender. And that's just not the case at all. And um, masculinity and femininity is based off of these different energies. And it's our culture trying to wrap our heads around them. And so um, when you see it from that lens and not just, oh, this is something where we're culturally constructing what a guy should do and what a woman should
Mhm.
do, we're thinking of it more of, oh, there are certain emotions and energies that come with both, and they're both framed in one versus the other. I think you kind of can have a better understanding of how you can find power or empowerment in both of those. And so that's why I don't think one should be over the other or one should
Right.
be prosecuted or vilified, because they're both needed in order to feel like a valuable human.
And I think that your point is maybe bringing up what I was kind of feeling, which is this idea of powerful is so attached to the masculine. Like when I think about, and I'm sure this is influenced by culture, when I think about a powerful woman, you think about the CEO type, probably a woman who's really walking in her masculine, right? And that's where power comes from. But you don't think about the single mom who is really showing up for her kids, and maybe you do to some degree, but more of like the caring, loving nonprofit, right? Like that energy of embrace and empathy, and that's not often associated with power. And maybe what you're saying, McKenzie, is can we also attach that to power when it comes to that more feminine archetype?
Yeah. Yeah. You can feel empowered by being able to properly identify and communicate your emotions and to lean into them and face them like grief and shame rather than conceal them. Yeah. Yeah.
I like what you said too, Mackenzie. I'm just gonna top off this segment with saying I like how you talked about empowerment, because the way I think about empowerment is living in your power, and I feel it when I am actively living in my power, and when I'm not, then I can go down kind of a rabbit hole of unnecessary like ruminating thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's a really great segue into what I brought to um, the pod today. So in 2017, the Pew Research Center released a report in which they talk about the rise of specifically women being able to financially provide for their families, where they earn the same, if not more, than men. We're seeing this growth, this exponential growth of women making more than men. We're now sitting at 31% as of 2017. And I believe, being in 2024 now, I believe it's almost gone up to about 40% at this rate. And I think this goes into this identity crisis, or this energy crisis that we're talking about here, where you have 40% of women now who are making more than men. But what the Pew Research Center made clear with this is still very much, if you look at the bottom statistic there, still majority, 2/3 of both men and women believe that the husband should be the one who's financially supporting the family. And so you have two realities, or you have two things coming together. One is reality, and then one is our cultural aspirations, right? So the reality is we're approaching the point where half of women are now making more than men, but 2/3 of both men and women both believe that men need to financially support the family. That being the case, I think we're coming to a point where expectation for masculine men is becoming extremely unreasonable. And what I mean by that is the average expectation that women have for a man to take home in terms of income, like their take home pay, has increased substantially from 20 years ago. On average now, I believe women expect or wish that their male partner or counterpart makes over $200,000 a year solely. And statistically, that's like less than 3% of men in the United States. So I'm bringing this up not to point blame at women or men, but I'm bringing this up because I think this reveals a deeper problem, which is our culture moves 10 times slower than reality, moves 10 times slower than some of these trends that we're seeing amongst men and women. Over the past 50 years, we've seen one of the greatest liberations of any particular group, and that's women. They're able to go to work and be able to provide for their family. A single mom 50 years ago couldn't do that. It's an incredible feat of cultural progression. But unfortunately, the expectations, especially in dating, are still very traditional to what it was 50 years ago. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on this and how you've seen this come up in your life, whether you've seen it come up in your life or not. And kind of what impact do you believe this has on men specifically?
This is a wild crowd. Yeah, thanks for bringing this. Honestly, I feel like if you're listening, I hope you can look at it too, because just seeing the visual of it, I think you're right. It brings up a conversation that needs to be had. What do we want to feel about this? It's reminding me of some conversations I was having this weekend. I went on a retreat, and it's a bunch of young people kind of around our age that are starting to have kids. We're starting to think about having kids. And I think on one end, and I was also having a conversation with someone who's significantly older, and this idea that I think men are now in a place of thinking about, well, and I've been in this place too. I'm like, is the partner that I want, like, do I prioritize a partner that's career oriented, mission driven, like she wants to go out and make a bunch of money and like be the breadwinner, or do I really want a partner that like wants to make a home and wants that space to feel safe and right, and more and more that's becoming something we're having to wrestle with, and to some degree I think there's a tendency to want what we don't have. And so maybe if you're listening to this and you are married, you're like, oh, it'd be nice to have more of that or more of this. But that is becoming more of a question. And the person I was speaking to who's thinking about becoming a mom was debating the idea of daycare. And she was saying, I feel like I really need to keep driving in my career. And like, this is really what I want to do. I want to be career driven. And she's saying, so I'm going to drop my kid off at daycare 5 days a week, 9 to 5. And her mother-in-law was up in arms, like could not understand, how could you ever drop your kid off at daycare? And I think it speaks to this graph on like, that would have been 1980. She was in that 13%. Now in this current day, that's the way a lot of women, a lot of partnerships are thinking is, hey, we both need to be making money. We'll drop the kid off at daycare. Like, yes, it's expensive, but it's worth it if we're both working. And it's just, the world is changing so much. But to realize like the culture is so stuck in this idea of man being the provider. Man, I think it's affirming a lot of the conversations I've been having and a lot of the confusion I feel around amongst our generation, where we're still not caught up with the reality of how quickly this is happening.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm for it. And why I say that is because I feel like the pendulum is swinging. And so now, as women are taking more of, earning more in the workforce, I think the pendulum kind of has to swing for us to be able to have these sort of conversations. And why I'm even, I don't know, I guess for me, I it makes me question my own manhood and where I put my values when there is a woman sitting across the table from me who I know makes more money than me. What does that do to my manhood? And I think it kind of makes me put my tail in between my legs, and instead of running from that feeling, I want to question and inquire of why. Why does it make me do that? And I think it goes and circumvents back to me placing value amongst how much I'm earning. And so I think this data, McKenzie, I think why it's so interesting and why you bring it up is because men are now trying to work harder and striving more to keep up in that whole, and then putting their identity under the umbrella or on the hamster wheel of trying to keep up. And I think that striving, in that act of striving, becomes a very tiresome process, and I think there's a lot of shame and guilt around it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And later on in this report, here's a different graph. And I find this graph really telling, which is okay, to be a good husband or a partner, or to be a good wife or partner, we're both genders are pretty much at the same place with most things, right? Being caring and compassionate, being able to contribute to household chores, being well educated. Both men and women kind of agree that those are important qualities. But just look at the stark difference as it pertains specifically to being able to provide financially. You have only 32% of people believing women should be able to provide for their family financially. And you have 71% of people, both men and women, believe that men should provide financially. But you look at all these other things and you sit there and you go, wow, those are all the same. We're all in agreement on all of those except the financial aspect of it. And I think you're right, Fletch. This speaks to why we're seeing so many men, especially middle-aged men, start to experience depression and suicide at higher rates than women. This is why we're seeing men, specifically in college and even in high school now, over investing into focusing on trying to get a career as soon as possible, over investing on getting internships and getting jobs and trying to stand out amongst the pack, because guys are getting more and more desperate to try to fit this mold and to be a desirable man. And so I agree. I'm for women being liberated, for women being able to make more than men. But we have to take a serious audit on the expectations that we bring on to one another as a result of this, right? And so if I'm sitting there going, wow, my wife is making more than me, I feel like I'm failing. How can a man be able to still feel like they can provide and offer security for their family without the monetary aspect being in consideration for that? And that's the challenge of modern masculinity nowadays, is creating the sense of purpose out of not being needed anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets practical if we, if we were to each try to answer the question. Okay, say we were to start to have kids right now, and all of a sudden we have 3 kids,
Wow.
and and our partner said, "Hey, I want to work. Like, I want you to stay at home and take care of the kids." Like, how would that feel for you guys? Like, I think that really brings it personal to me, because I literally haven't even considered what that would really be like to not continue to like drive towards career goals, mission, all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, Fletch.
no, I was going to say, McKenzie, I think about some of, some of these women who are, ball and entrepreneurs, like stars, and have had a lot of financial success. And then I look at their husband, right? What do they do? What are they providing that then allows that star to then go out and achieve all of this career success. And the woman who's coming up for me right now is Jessica Alba, right? She's an actress and has had a lot of success in the filmmaking business, and then is a brilliant entrepreneur and has started her own skincare and has had a lot of success in that realm. I think her husband, a lot of times, I would say her husband is a very, based on what I know, is a very calming individual and a very grounding person who then allows her to then go out. So I think it becomes a lot of maybe emotional support, and then something that allows her to then kind of go off and do her thing.
Yeah. And ideally that is great, right? But the problem is boys are being raised to do the opposite. Boys are being raised to suppress emotions, to suppress their understanding. I think on average, men are 15 years behind women in emotional intelligence. So we are not raising boys
15?
15 years. We are not raising boys to be able to provide emotional security because they can't move past the basic emotions of being mad, happy, or sad, right? They can't sit there and understand or be able to reflect and find something that's considered a weakness emotion like embarrassment, humiliation, fail, whatever it is. And that's the double-edged sword on this. It is wonderful that women are able to make more than men now, and that we're seeing that trend just creep up to almost 50-50. But men need to find a place in culture, and men still need to find a place in being feeling worthy and valuable. Like I said in the last episode, right? The two most common words in men's suicide notes are feeling worthless and useless, right? We are losing hundreds of thousands of men to depression and suicide because we are having an immense amount of lack of compassion for men who are suffering, men who can't find this purpose because women are making more than them. Other men are making more than them. They're feeling like they're a failure as a result. And this statistic proves that this is still very, very important to most couples.
Yeah, there's a couple when I was growing up, their family friends lived right down the street. And it's just reminding me that the woman was voted one of the most powerful women in finance. Like, she is a very impressive, career-driven woman. And the husband was the stay-at-home dad. And it was sort of the butt of the joke for a lot of our friends growing up. Right. And like, what does that start to do when the guy that stays at home and takes care of the family and pays the bills and like make sure that, the dog goes out, like when that becomes the butt of the joke, what is that doing culturally, to make sure these numbers stay consistent and don't really change?
Yeah.
And I see that this survey was done, a couple years back. I think it was 2017. So I wonder if it's going in the right direction or not. I'm curious if you guys think it's starting to change, or what do you think?
All indications at this point, because I asked that question when I wanted to bring this to the podcast, all indications at this point is everything is getting more and more severe. We aren't seeing that understanding. Just like the great liberation of women into the workforce took both men and women, both men and women need to help men figure out where they're going to land after this. And it's not a matter of blame, but it's a matter of helping both out so that both can be in unison.
You telling me that it's not always a win or lose situation? Segueing into the to the final video here.
Go ahead, HD. Give some context on what you're bringing.
Yeah. So I'm bringing in a bit of polarizing figure, pop culture relevant, just relevant media. Something that actually happened last night from the recording of this podcast. Which, if you don't know, if you're taking a Patrick Star route here, which some of us do, and I totally respect it, which means living under a rock,
Mm.
then you won't be aware that it's actually the Republican primaries are happening right now, in process. And there's a candidate, maybe you've heard of him. His name is Donald Trump, and he is well in the lead, commanding lead of the Republican Party, almost certain no one can catch him. That's been pretty clear for a little while now. Um, and the final candidate standing is Nikki Haley, who is the ex-governor of South Carolina, and has been running a hard race and definitely going after Trump. And we know that Trump uh, doesn't have much love to give to people that go after him. So this is a little snippet of his victory speech last night after claiming the second state of the primary, New Hampshire.
I'm up and I'm watching, and I said, she's taking a victory lap. And we beat her so badly, but Ron beat her also. Ron came in second and he left. She came in third and she's still hanging around. The other thing, she only got 25% of the Republican votes. I don't know if you saw that. Tremendous numbers of independents came out because in this state, because you have a governor that doesn't frankly know what the hell he's doing, in this state, in the Republican primary, they accept Democrats to vote. In fact, I think they had 4,000 Democrats before October 6th. They already voted. Now, they're only voting because they want to make me look as bad as possible. Because if you remember, we won in 2016. And if you really remember, and if you want to play it straight, we also won in 2020. By more. And we did much better in 2020 than we did in 2016. But as they said, we lost by a whisker, just by a whisker. No. But we can't let that happen. You have to have people that speak up. I said, I can go up and I can say to everybody, oh, thank you for the victory. It's wonderful. Or I can go up and say, who the hell was the imposter that went up on the stage before and claimed a victory? She did very poorly, actually. She had to win. The governor said, she's going to win, she's going to win, she's going to win. Then she failed badly. Now, I have here, if he promises to do it in a minute or less, but the only person more angry than, let's say, me, but I don't get too angry, I get even.
I had to play to the last part because oh my goodness.
I don't get angry, I get even.
He's really getting better at enunciating some words. I mean,
he also just goes all over the map. It's hard for him to focus on one thing long enough to really see it through as a thought. But this
do we cheer now or what? When should we yell?
Yeah. And let's be clear. The purpose of this podcast is not to talk politics, but to talk masculinity and how do we become more integrated men. So we want to approach it from that angle. And I wanted to bring this to you guys for a multitude of reasons, but one is what is this culture of winning, where if I win, you lose. If you lose, I win. It's constantly pinning each other against one another and creating this hyper culture of competition and putting one another down, especially as men that I see. When we talk about creating an environment of support, I'm just curious, first, what you guys think about that culture of winners and losers and how that may be working against the world that I know we all want to see created, where men feel supported and working towards being healthier.
Yeah, I can go first. We talked about politics a little bit on last episode and how it relates to sports. And I think how they both relate is in the simple fact that someone needs to win and someone needs to lose. It's just fundamental to how sports win or how sports work and how politics work. Politics does not work with an election where everyone wins, right? And I think that's important because it helps that pendulum push us slowly into the direction that's best for us, or the direction that we deserve, not necessarily the direction that you fully believe in. And that's how, you know, a diverse set of people are able to come together and push a country forward. But we have been raised to not understand how to win, and we've been raised to not understand how to lose. And you're seeing that play out in very toxic ways, especially in politics today. It always boggles my mind, both Democrats and Republican friends that I have, where they have a belief system, right, of like treat everyone with kindness, treat everyone with compassion. You don't know their background, you don't know their story. But as soon as someone projects a political opinion, that belief just goes right out the window for them, and they immediately start having a very judgmental view on somebody's point of view.
Mm.
And I think that is the essence of, or a contributing factor to revealing this sense that we don't know how to win or don't know how to lose. And we haven't been taught how to win or lose. And I think that plays out clearly in this kind of scenario.
I mean, they won the primary, and he spent the entire time talking about the loser. Not for a moment did he paint the vision of the America, wow, we all win because we won tonight.
Right.
He spent the entire speech putting her down, putting the governor down, putting the Democrats down, everyone else, and creating more of a us versus the world narrative. Oof.
Well, and Donald, let's be clear that like his attitude is the masculine reaction to a government that I think many men believe have gotten too feminine in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so he is only reacting in the traditional masculine mindset that probably a lot of other men in that audience share exactly, which is we beat them. That's the important thing. We beat them. It's not about why or how or if. It's that we just beat them. And and to be fair, I do see that all across the political spectrum.
For sure. Yeah.
He is just the masculine, the traditional masculine embodiment of what I think a lot of men are struggling with, which is this concept that, yes, toxic masculinity may seem bad culturally, but it's a clear answer to what I'm feeling and to what I'm going through. And so therefore it's the easiest road to take.
Watch.
It's really hard for me to watch this and listen to this without laughing. Just because of the way he talks and just like, yeah, I go inside of like an SNL writer's brain and they're just picking out nuggets. Buy a whiskey. Buy a whiskey.
Oh, whiskey.
Like,
That's so good.
bro, like he just the full disposition, the way he talks, just is to me through the tongue of slander. And I feel like it's so hard to really understand the ethos and the like the heart behind his message, because he's staying on the surface and doing anything he can to formulate a narrative where he is constantly in control and in that sort of power position. Now, like talking further about power, I think he is very power hungry, and I think he's willing to do whatever it takes to be in a position of power, even if it's at the risk of putting other people down. And what's sad to me is the fact that this is a political system. These are the people who are supposed to be protecting and leading our country, right? And I think when we accept the way in which we speak to one another at the highest level, it trickles down. And to me, just the way he approaches and talks to someone he was in competition with, you know, like Nikki Haley, is just sad, man. Like, you have a chance to go up there and deliver a speech that is like a tip of the hat to her, and he doesn't. He takes a completely different route, and it also looks like he's gotten more of a spray tan, so he's turning more orange.
Yeah.
He also, you know, let's credit him for some growth. He said he's retiring the name DeSanctimonious when he talks about Ron DeSantis. So that's a positive. That's a step in the right direction.
But he does talk about Crooked Joe Biden in that speech. But I mean, there's no doubt Nikki Haley also said, this is the thing, is like Nikki Haley said some things about Trump that just, puts her in that same category of like, why you're just putting him down as opposed to lifting herself and what she believes in up. We see it all across the political spectrum, left, right, in between. What we know about Donald Trump is his feelings do get hurt very easily, and he doesn't get angry. He gets even. Like he will go after people that go after him, and he'll do it at the detriment of pushing forward things that really could be good for people in moments. And like you said, McKenzie, I think it's interesting to understand, I mean, what he's speaking to in that like that projected strength that I think people connect to. The people that do support Donald Trump see him as, hey, we need someone who can stand up for America, who can be more of that bully. And like, we want that in our leaders. And what does that say about us, that we want a bully to lead us?
Yeah.
And perhaps some areas that we're not super aware of. Wow. Okay. Well, that actually may be saying something about the work that we need to do as individuals.
Well, guys, if one of our goals is to really invite guests into this podcast and have healthy conversations, I think Donald J would be an incredible guest. So if you guys if you guys know how to get in touch with him, maybe throw a paper airplane during one of his speeches and dudes with feelings invite.
He's definitely a dude with feelings. I'll say that.
He's got feelings. He's got feelings.
He does. I think he puts them, he takes them all in, and instead of knowing how to digest them, he just vomits them all out.
He doesn't have the tools. He's just not been raised. He's been raised with like a very narrow set of tools to handle all of those emotions. That's like, I see that so much, especially with older men. It's just, they don't have tools.
They only go to Home Depot and get the physical tools. I think what we're challenging men to go into a different store, the emotional store, and learn how to use tools.
Is that a business idea there, Fletch?
Of course, yes. Emotional Depot.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure, as always, boys. Hey guys, thanks for getting to the end with us. We really appreciate y'all being here. Make sure wherever you're listening to this to go rate it and share it with a friend. It really helps get the word out there about this podcast. And there's one more thing that I really want to share with you guys. Beyond the Beat, which is a film we've been working on for the last several years, is officially live on Amazon. This is a big deal for us, and we really would love to hear what you guys think about it. So go and watch Beyond the Beat. It's this story about these three amazing friends who started a creative arts festival in the wake of a 2-decade civil war in northern Uganda. The film explores the potential and the power of art and creativity to inspire communities and really to bring healing in our lives and in communities all around the world. We think there's a ton of value in it, and we had a blast making it. So please go check it out and let us know what you think, and we'll see you next week. Peace, y'all.